Welcome, climate viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com. Many of you probably seen the Chernobyl TV series on HBO. It's one of the highest rated TV shows of all time now. And I give it a lot of credit for being very thrilling television. But they left out some of the most important parts. And as a result, not only has the full story still not been told, but even the Russian government is claiming that they're going to make their own TV series to tell their side of the story. And one thing we've learned from history is that if you go over to the article that's already published, links in the details, there are two sides to every story, and the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. So we're going to try to get to that truth today. Now, many of you may have caught my previous articles on the Russian woodpecker and the weather modification and how it's all related to the Chernobyl meltdown. And this really, I wrote this last year, around May of last year. And I said it seemed to me, based on all the evidence, that the CIA probably was involved in sabotaging the Chernobyl nuclear site. And wouldn't you know, the Russian government just came out and said exactly that. So let's see how all this plays out. Like I said, links already in the details. Putin's media struggle to deal with HBO's Chernobyl. And that article that is right here. And as you can see, the fact that an American, not a Russian TV channel told the story about our own heroes is a source of shame for pro-Kremlin media. And if you scroll down here to the highlighted section, still an attempt will be made to put an entirely different spin on those events. Russia's NTV channel has already announced that it is shooting its own Chernobyl series based on the premise that the CIA sent an agent to the Chernobyl zone to carry out acts of sabotage. Whoa. So, like I said, back in May 4th, 2018, I was talking about this article from Popular Communications, June 1984, and how, basically they were talking about what's known as the Russian woodpecker. And most people don't even know what the Russian woodpecker is, let alone that it's right next to the Chernobyl nuclear site. So I wanted to bring all of this to light, especially in light of the fact that right now, the Chernobyl mini-series that was on HBO is a very hot topic, pardon the pun, and that it is one of the highest, if not the highest rated TV show series in all history on IMDb. So how did we get here? What's the what? Well, it turns out, they were talking about it over here. This is Western Journal, the Western Journal, and, they said basically, but according to Moscow, the pro-Kremlin media have launched a mini crusade against it. And that's how I had to track down this other article where the thing have a Cold War theme of spy versus spy. He wrote that the Russian series will be based on the premise that the CIA sent an agent to the Chernobyl zone to carry out acts of sabotage. Now, I had said that in this video last year, just using common freaking sense. And what is the common freaking sense? So, for those who don't know what the Russian woodpeckers are, also known as steel-yard steelwork, Duga radars, and the Krug ionospheric probes that were associated with each of these are over-the-horizon radars. But they could also be considered early versions of ionospheric heaters, similar to HARP. The fact that basically these are able to modify the weather is the biggest conspiracy part of all of this. No scientist is going to say, oh yeah, they can definitely screw with the weather. But this is what the actual Duga radar website looks like. We got a nice little video of that. So basically, it looks like a big steel wall, and it's basically the same thing as HAARP. It's an ionospheric heater. It is a over-the-horizon radar, an incoherent scatter radar, and it is very tall. It is the #1 tourist site if you go to the Chernobyl fallout zone, and a lot of people, if you're going to the Chernobyl site, this is the #1 spot they're going to take you to, because it blows your mind when you look at the size of it. Now, if you pause it right about here, you can see these things are, let me get that out of the way. These cages are basically antennas, and they're all pointed in one direction, okay? And real quick, let me bring this up. Over here, we're over here on Google Earth. Real quick, this is the Chernobyl meltdown site. As you can see right here, this is the Chernobyl reactor. And where are we talking about? We're talking about right over here. This is the Russian Woodpecker. So if you look at it and you do a little bit of math here, we'll put this in miles, and we'll go from here to here. We can see it's 5.9 miles. So very close, only 5 miles away, powered by a nuclear reactor, okay? And you zoom in here and you can actually see the Russian Woodpecker in 3D, which is like this. Very, very tall structure. These are the buildings over here. And as you can see, it dwarfs them. That's a 4-story building right there. And you can see how tall these are in comparison. So very, very large structure. Now, why is this important? Because, in the article, they were basically accusing them of weather warfare. This was Jack Anderson. This was published in a newspaper, but it was partially classified, and it says declassified in part by the CIA. It was originally in the Washington Post, May 25th, 1981, The Race for Star Wars Weapons. And it talks about the CIA and different types of directed energy weapons, charged particle beam devices. And basically, this is, not just, we're talking about lasers and things like that, but we're talking about these ionospheric heaters. Well, right here in this huge infographic, we have the Russian Woodpecker and the weather modification that allegedly occurred over the United States. And what they said in here was this over-the-horizon radar, 3 steel yard over-the-horizon radar transmitters, that could focus their beams over America. Now, I mapped these out over here on ClimateViewer 3D, so you can actually see them, the same ones from the image there. So there's that picture, the map of that. And let's go back over here, and you can see them here. It's Gomel, Chernobyl, and Komsomolsk on Amur. Anyway, I'm not fluent in Russian, but regardless, I found each of those sites. You can see them over here. And then, of course, the Chernobyl one down here. Now, if you want to see the reactor meltdown, you turn this on, and you can see all of the different reactors. This is a photo of what it looked like when it actually blew up. I'll blow that up for you guys at home so you can see that. And that's a big hole in that's an actual photograph of the Chernobyl meltdown. And then we'll go to the radioactive fallout, which looks like this. So the Chernobyl reactor is here. The Russian Woodpecker is here. And then you can see that there's another large portion of radioactive waste that fell over here. So what the hell happened there? That's when we get into the fact that basically they were doing, weather modification to put that rain over there. So let's look at the article I just put out. If you come down here, the overview's here. The old article I wrote and basically the weather modification history timeline entry to go with it is right here. I'll get to that in just a moment. And, I've got an infographic that shows the 5.9 miles between my cat. I swear, let me get this little back. Come here. Come here. Let me grab my cat before it makes any more noise. I swear, Graham, you are such a troublemaker. Don't you understand we're talking about serious stuff right here? And if you have nothing nice to say, say nothing at all. Okay? Please. This is serious business. Jeez. Kitty cats. Anyway. So, Russian cloud seeding prevents Chernobyl's radioactive rains reaching Moscow. And as you can see right here, in the sleepy towns of southern Belarus, villagers looked up to see planes with strange yellow and gray contrails snaking across the sky. If Operation Cyclone had not been top secret, the headlines would have been spectacular. Scientists using advanced technology save Russian cities from technological disaster using cloud seeding. Now, like I said, this is well documented over here on weathermodificationhistory.com. You can see all of the references behind that. Chernobyl's disastrous cover-up is a warning for the next nuclear age. That's where that quote came from. It was just posted on The Guardian. You can read it right here. And that's where I read that quote from about the contrails and the weather modification. So that day in a Moscow airport, technicians loaded artillery shells with silver iodide. Soviet Air Force pilots climbed in the cockpits of Tu-16 bombers and made their easy 1-hour flight to Chernobyl. The pilots circled following the weather. They flew 30, 70, 100, and 200 kilometers, chasing the inky black billows of radioactive waste. When they caught up with the cloud, they shot jets of silver iodide into it to emancipate the rain. So the whole idea here, and that's why we see these two different zones, is that, and this is not in the TV series at all. And I have several different, including direct from Berilov, and what was the other guy's name? It's right here in the sidebar. Yuri Israel, this guy. Yuri Israel also did Russian geoengineering solar radiation management field experiments, but Yuri Israel was the one who gave the order to do the cloud seeding over. Israel's decision was easy, make it rain. And you can see that here. And this is in the article, Ukrainians call for prosecutions over Chernobyl. And basically, in Ukraine and Belarus, that's where most of the radioactivity ended up dumping, and they didn't tell a soul. And of course, this was not brought up in the documentary, how all of this got dumped on Belarus, and the whole point, was to prevent it from reaching Moscow, which was right here. So, of course, why did the Chernobyl nuclear plant blow up? Was it actual CIA mission, or was it not? That's what I was saying here in this article. And, the reason being, basically they said straight up that, the weather, basically the ELF transmitters at the Duga radar site were responsible for killing people in America. And that's what it really boils down to. And you can read all about that over here on weathermodificationhistory.com as well. And you can see all of the different Soviet superpower tests burn the ionosphere, monitoring times, all of the different newspaper articles right here. Very large image on that. And, how they were burning the ionosphere, how they caused the El Nino to pop up out of season, how it worked, what they were doing, and, all of this stuff is highlighted up here at the top. That basically Dr. Mitrowski, he's a Canadian guy, I believe. got it up here at the top. In 1978, Dr. Andrew Mitrowski of the Canadian State Department commented on this technique using ELF, extremely low frequency radio signals. He said in the cases of the winter of 1976 and 77, the Soviets had managed to establish terrestrial electrical resonance, and then learned how to establish relatively stable and localized ELF magnetic fields, which were able to hamper or divert the jet stream flow in the northern hemisphere. That is a huge statement, and this comes from Popular Communications. This is not your conspiracy magazine. So this was back in 76, and then in 1986, basically that's when, 1983, 126 people died because of freezing temperatures in America, and the weather was all screwed up, and the El Nino popped up, off its normal, schedule. Dr. Mitrowski postulates that the Soviet ELF signals are pulses on a frequency of 31.5 hertz and have caused giant standing wave troughs in the Rocky Mountains between Alberta and New Mexico, and another through the eastern United States. So the idea that basically they were using the Russian Woodpecker to, do weather warfare over America in 1983, and then magically in 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear site, which was only 5 miles away, blew up. So my presentation was based on the fact that it just seemed too damn coincidental. And when we're talking about weather warfare, this is not something that you're going to get a straight answer out of either the CIA in America, HBO, or the Russian government. Of course, now we have the Russian government coming out and saying, or at least confirming my belief last year, that there probably was CIA involvement in the Chernobyl meltdown, and that it is related to the weather warfare that was attributed to the Russian Woodpecker or the Duga 3 radar, which was on the Chernobyl site. So I'd be very interested to see how far the Russian version of Chernobyl TV series is going to go. Will they admit to the weather modification aspects of the Chernobyl incident? Will they mention the Duga 3 radar at all? I seriously doubt that. But I don't see how you can't mention the Duga 3 radar and then go on to talk about how the CIA blew up Chernobyl. I'd like to see what their excuse is for why the CIA would blow up Chernobyl. Because to me, using common sense, looking at all the evidence, it's pretty clear that HBO left out big portions of this story. Not covering the Moscow rain, blocking, preventing the radioactive rain from hitting Moscow while killing so many people in Belarus. Not talking about, the Duga 3 radar at all. Of course, that's just conspiracy theory stuff. And and then leaving out the fact that it was just sabotage. They just said in the series that, one of the hydrogen tanks just exploded. And, let's be realistic. If you wanted to sabotage a nuclear power plant and you were a CIA guy, you could literally go in there and slap some C4 on the side of a hydrogen tank, walk out the building, click a button, and then boom, you got yourself a nuclear meltdown. And ain't nobody going in there to find the residue from the C4 afterwards. So, plausible deniability and all of that aside, it's still my strong, firm belief that, this was a high level CIA job. I'm not siding with the Russians on this. I said this before the Russians came out and said this. I said it last year. Links are in the details. You can watch it. But it seems that the Russian government is confirming my initial belief. And I think that there's two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. There's way more to the Chernobyl meltdown than we will ever be told. in full. I watched the Chernobyl series. I thought it was excellent. We had a bet going with my wife. I said, there's no way in hell they will mention the cloud seeding. Because they don't want they don't want to mention the fact that they can control the weather, that they can deny rainfall to Moscow. We made it rain here, so that didn't make it rain here. That's a no-no, and people would really freak out if they had heard that on HBO. Suddenly there'd be a lot of interest in weather modification. But that's my side of the story, and I'm sticking to it. So I do hope you guys will go over to the article. It's in the details already. It's on ClimateViewer.com. And check out the links, the references, all yourself. Don't take my word for it. You do the research yourself. Well, I think when you look at this, when you go to the weather modification history timeline and you look at the actual references, go read all of this stuff from Jack Anderson to the different websites, Monitoring Times, Popular Communications article. Do the evidence, go through the evidence. These are all of the different quotes on the rain making that happened there. And these are straight from, how we made the Chernobyl rain, Telegraph, 2000. This is not a conspiracy. This is factual evidence. Russia stopped clouds. I think this one's from archive.org because it got deleted. But this was the Blanket Effect, amazing website. And this was an interview with Dr. Beryulev. They got his name misspelled there. It's Beryulev, which I found this on Wyoming University, Weather Modification by Aircraft Cloud Seeding, and there's his name properly spelled. Head of Department of Cloud and Physics and Weather Modification, Central Aerological Observatory in Russian Federation. So that's your guy. Him and Israel, Yuri Israel, were behind the weather modification that happened as a result of it. And then 25 years of cloud seeding activity to modify weather conditions in cities. Kalaskov. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. So you guys go read it, do the math, do the research, and I think you're going to come to the same conclusion. The CIA more than likely did sabotage the Chernobyl the Chernobyl site. I said website. And this has something to do with the weather warfare that happened in America. You just can't make this stuff up. If you see it for yourself, I think you're going to be freaked out by it because, the truth is scarier than fiction. And that's why the Chernobyl series has done so well on the HBO. But, there it is in black and white. Read it and weep. Wow, this is a really big picture. Maybe I shouldn't make the images so large. I had 100 megabit per second download speed, and it's taking that long to load this huge image. Is ELF able to manipulate the weather? And over here it talks about, how the people died and all of this. This is from Popular Communications. So read it. Spread it around. Hell, if you can and you got the ability, go over here to the IMDb page, leave comments on the IMDb page to this video, link to this video, link to the article, and get people informed. Maybe we can get some more people to actually pay attention to this, since this is a really hot topic. The Chernobyl meltdown still in effect today. You look at the size of that thing and it's insane. A lot of people are talking about Fukushima. Not very many people talk about Chernobyl anymore. And this HBO series has really brought it back to life. But they're still not telling the full story. And I would like for the full story to be known. So you guys, I appreciate you watching this. I hope that you will click that like button and subscribe. All of this information on ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, and WeatherModificationHistory.com is free of charge and open source. You're free to download and remix this stuff. I appreciate everybody who supports me on Patreon.com/ClimateViewer. And if you love me, like me, or you appreciate this, you can send some money my way on PayPal.me/ClimateViewer or GoFundMe. That's always greatly appreciated. Learn about the 10 technologies used to control the weather today, because most people don't have a clue about any of this. All they've ever heard about just summarily is chemtrails, and we need people to know the facts about this sort of thing so that we can bring accountability to the hidden world of weather warfare with the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. I would greatly appreciate your support with that. So now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Use this information, and with information comes power. With power comes great responsibility. So please remember, even though the HBO series butchered it, even though the Russians are going to try to tell their side of the story, and even though there's going to be a lot of fighting in between, there's two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. And above all, attack ideas, not people.
Kids are impressionable. That's why here at this station, we watch the programs and commercials your child watches carefully. He may see bad guys, but not in the role of heroes. And he'll learn that crime doesn't pay. Because your child's welfare is our concern, too. That's part of our code.
Better than anything you can get without a prescription. Anything. It's the best.